Welcome to Potentials. This is Lija, and today I have my special guest, Miranda Rae. She is a medical intuitive, Usui Tibetan Reiki master. She uses intuitive energy medicine, ancestral healing, channel for White Hawk of the Star Nations, and she's an SSP experiencer. Welcome to the show, and I'm very excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me on, and just so glad that we were able to connect today. And
Yes.
yeah, just gratitude.
Thank you. And yes, much gratitude. Well, I guess we're going to start with your experience with the White Hawk of the Star Nations and how that came about.
Yes.
Very
So
cool.
my spiritual awakening was a pretty fast and furious experience. I really had done a lot of, interpersonal work as far as like processing my own trauma. And I'd gone the route of Western medicine and spent a lot of time digging into things and really worked with the Body Keeps the Score book, which was by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, which um, it was really, really helpful for me to understand how trauma was stored in the body
Mm,
and doing things like yoga, meditation, breath work. Um, and really, I felt like I'd kind of hit a wall when it came to what Western medicine, Western psychology had to offer me. And I remember it was around Valentine's Day, and I wanted to do something nice for myself, which I didn't usually buy things for me. And so I said, well, I don't really want a massage. I I don't want to go get my nails done. I don't want to do the pedicure thing. I wanted something different. So I started looking online and I found a Reiki session, and I had no idea what Reiki was. And then I started doing a little research on it and found out that it was described in very layman's terms as a massage for the mind. And I thought that sounded pretty good. So I went and had my first Reiki session done, and it completely opened me up. It was the first time that I ever really knew what it was like just to have my own energy in my own body, in my own field, and nobody else's shit.
yeah.
So I drove away from the session and I was hooked. I was like, this is amazing. Everyone should know what this feels like. And so during the experience, I actually had, very vivid, colors. I could feel the energy moving. I started getting visions about things, and I was really trying to figure out, what does that mean? I got very curious. And so I just remember driving away, and I had the hands on the steering wheel, and I said, I don't know where this goes, but this is my starting point. This is my foundation for something much bigger. And it really did open me up to my intuitive side. Again, you know, our society is very, very good at oppressing our gut feelings and our intuition.
Absolutely.
Uh, Luckily, I'm grateful and blessed that, the intuitive skills naturally run in my family um, from my mother's line. And so as far as I know, I'm the only person in my family that's ever really pursued any intuitive skills. But as I began working more with meditation and getting Reiki sessions regularly, more and more guidance came through, more and more visions about my future, and more intuitive advice. And at one point during a shamanic journey, because it was that point where I was looking for a guide. And so I went online and I found a recorded guided meditation with a shamanic drumming track. I think it was Michael Harner or something like that. And, um, you know, I had dabbled a little bit and learned a little bit about Gabby Bernstein's how to connect with your spirit guide. Again, very basic things. And so she had suggested, have 3 questions for your spirit guide to ask for guidance.
Mm.
So I go into the shamanic journey, and immediately there is this Native American man, and he's standing there, and he's just open arms, and he's like, "You're here, you're here." And I just remember saying, "Okay, it's nice to meet you." And, you know, here are my 3 questions. And he said, "Stop." He said, "You are not here to ask questions this time." He said, "You are here to observe only." He said, "Think about, what do you hear? What do you see? What do you feel? What do you sense? What do you smell? Use all of your senses in this world. And that is how you obtain information, the medicine that you need in this journey to bring back to yourself and for others to help them heal." So I was pretty blown away by the rest of the experience. And after the meditation, I thought, I've lost my mind. I've lost my mind. This isn't real. This isn't real, because everything about our society and our culture in the
Yes.
modern world says that unless you can physically, tangibly see it in your reality, then it can't be true.
Right.
And that's so not true. So I ended up hiring another person. I hired a woman who was a shaman to drum for me to really meet my true spirit guide. And it was the same Native American guy, and he's just laughing his ass off at me. And I'm just thinking, why is he laughing? And he says, you know, "You didn't think it was me, did you?" And of course, I'm just in shock. And he started showing me lifetimes in which he was my grandfather or a father or a medicine man or a shaman. And in each lifetime, I was his student. I was part of his soul group, part of his soul family.
Wow.
And so he and I embarked on a very fast and furious journey about learning about shamanic practices, learning about breath work, learning about, the plants and the different meanings of animals. And um, he began to show up in Reiki sessions immediately when I started doing energy work on friends and family. And there would always be this intuitive guided information, or it would be information about their past lives. Um, and what was interesting is that the stuff that would come through might not have meant anything, or might not have meant anything particularly specific or special to me, but it always meant something on a very deep and personal level to the person.
Hmm.
And so I thought that was really, really neat, the way that his energy comes through and what he has to share.
Yes.
And eventually, I kept asking, I said, "Well, where do you come from? Where do you come from?" Like, obviously we've had all these past lives. And it was also about that time that I got into learning past life regression hypnotherapy, because I wanted to learn more about what I was seeing and helping clients understand what came through in the healing sessions. So I ended up doing some ancestral healing sessions on myself to work with the different lineages, both my mother's and my father's. And it was very interesting after the session working with my mother's line. I just remember my great grandmother, who has Native American ancestry. She came through and she just had this big smile on her face, and she was very warm and loving. And she said, "Here," she said, "these are for you. They will support you." And she handed me two handfuls of stars. And of
Wow.
course, I'm thinking, okay, that's wonderful, and I still didn't quite understand the connection. And it wasn't until really, really sitting in meditation with White Hawk where I learned more about the star nations and the connection of what my grandmother was trying to tell me. So, um, the star nations, for me, they carry the frequencies of Pleiadian, Arcturian, Andromedan, Venusian, and Lyran, and Sirius B. So those are the frequencies that come through when I do intuitive healing sessions with people and for myself. And it's really just been a fantastic and wonderful journey, full of, lots of crazy things happening. But um, I began to get curious more and more about the Star Nations, and knew that they had a connection to Native Americans, and knew that I had some of that ancestry there. So I started attending a sweat lodge and going to that pretty regularly. And more information started coming through. And where I was living at the time, I had just, set up household and was getting things done. And about that time, that's when I learned about SSP experiences, but still not knowing exactly what those were. normally in the past, when I would get past life information, or past life experiences that would come up for me to work on and gain the lessons and stuff, it would be totally different. But these new sets of memories were actually sparked by meeting someone in a laundromat, complete stranger.
Wow.
And it was quite an experience. It was one of those that really, really took me about a year to really process and integrate. And even though I had been listening to some of Elena Danon's work and Alex Collier and Dr. Michael Salla, I still really SSP and super soldiers were not really on my radar. I was more listening uh, to all of them basically to gain more knowledge about, intelligent life and, what exopolitics was, and what was all involved and how our governments were involved. But then it became a very personal journey for me after the experience in the laundromat. And that memory was quite a strange experience. It ended up that the person that I met at the laundromat and had a random conversation, just an elderly gentleman, he ended up, we found out later in some healing sessions around the SSP that he was actually my commander. And I had been a psychic spy and I had been compromised. And I knew that I had been compromised, so I ended up trying to go into hiding, very much like a Jason Bourne kind of experience. But they ended up catching me, bringing me back into the tunnels. And from there, it was an experience of torture and then ultimately self-destruction of this clone. And as we are learning, when a person has clones, when the clone dies or is what I call decommissioned, the memories from that clone return back to your consciousness. So that explained why I kept getting all of these strange memories about being in an underground tunnel, about, severe torture, and how I ultimately recognized this person. So lots of things in physical reality triggering what I would remember from that clone life. So since then, I've learned about another experience. It was a 20 and back with another clone, and there is some time that's been on Mars, and that is something that I'm currently still doing memory recall on. And from what I've learned, again, baptism by fire, I guess would be the best way to describe it, is that these memories come back in the right time and they come back in a series. And in between, you're not going to know everything at once, and that's for good reason because there is so much to process and integrate. So they only give you what you can handle at a time. So it's been a very, very interesting journey, and I've worked with a few SSP experiencers as well, and that has been very rewarding to help them get some closure and really to kind of heal so that they can ultimately do what they're supposed to do here in physicality to kind of assist during the awakening here.
Yes. Wow. That's an amazing story. I don't even know where to begin. Um, it's amazing that, you were able to, um, like come to terms with it, after feeling those feelings, like it had to be hard to go through all that.
To be honest, probably the hardest part about um, integration of the clone memories. The most recent clone memories that have come through, it was a clone that, literally they had, used it for a 20 and back for remote viewing, and for data collection. And we're still unraveling all the different missions, but in that healing session, one of the things that my higher self did bring through and was able to see was how this clone was terminated or decommissioned, and it was by injection. And, you know, the most interesting part was the consciousness leaving the clone's body. The clone felt, or at least the consciousness felt going back to creator, going back to source, and kind of having a moment there, and then traveling through time and space, and then being brought back into my consciousness. So there was this experience of coming home and integrating back into the original soul, the soul part, this consciousness piece, integrating back down to the DNA level. And it was, you know, like being in the void, but then seeing all of this light and color and seeing each little piece being um, being put back into the consciousness. And it was the most surreal thing to try to recall and describe how that clone felt, to know that it was going back home, going that soul part, that piece that was in the clone, going back home, not only to meet with Creator, but then also going back into my own consciousness. So there was a lot of emotions
Mm.
with that experience, but also it was a very freeing experience too, knowing that, all these memories, all these things that I'd been recalling, were real and where they came from. And so there's this greater level of understanding about myself, my own experiences, and really what we're living through as a collective, and these stories, these SSP experiences. And I feel like this is probably true for others. There's so much knowledge about, what's been going on that we have not been privy to, what we've not been aware of,
Right.
and how we have, as humans, have been used without our consent. So more than anything, yes, it's emotional, and but more than anything, I think it's really about making sure that this doesn't continue, making sure that um, children aren't being used for nefarious purposes, that children aren't being harvested and used for their gifts or for, their energy, their light. I see them very much as, they're the gems of our future, and they certainly deserve better. So my
Absolutely.
understanding and my belief is that, whatever we accept here in our reality is what we are allowing. And the longer that we allow this stuff to happen, we're just simply recreating it. So it really needs to be brought to light. And I think others like Tony Rodriguez and Rebecca Rose, there's several others that I'm forgetting names, but they're doing a lot to bring awareness to this, and they've been speaking out about this for a long time. And it's my understanding that there's probably far more people that have been used in a multitude of ways than what we truly know about. So,
And probably generations of them. Like we're all suffering the generational trauma of these things happening for over the eons, basically.
yes, yes. I mean, especially when it comes to, you know, energetic bloodlines, or there's a huge thing of, and I think it might have been Sky Prince that said this, and it really did make a whole lot of sense to me and in my experiences, is that you know SSP, you're either born into it through connections to the military industrial complex, or you are chosen.
Hmm.
um, so um, yeah, we definitely need to have more people speaking out about this and sharing their experiences. So
Yes. Yes. I'm very proud of you for doing this. And I just want to thank you for actually coming forward and talking about this because I know it's not easy.
it's not easy. Like I mean, I had tried to speak out about this before, and it was very nerve-wracking, simply because, you know, at first I thought, am I going to be believed about this stuff? I mean, is anybody going to believe me? And I still have family members that are, still alive and still very heavily programmed, and they just can't simply go there with this stuff. And so it's kind of like you're a little bit of a loner out there by yourself, and they just can't talk about it, they can't hear about it, it's not on their radar.
Right.
um
And they don't want
so
to believe it either. I mean, there's so many people that just don't want to believe that this is actually happening or that it happened, because it's just so dark, you know? I mean,
it is, I mean, when you think about, I'll give an example. I think there was a recent interview or a recent clip that I saw on X, and it was a politician. I think he was a representative, and he was talking about, you know, blackmail and, the military industrial complex and all of this. Like, it goes so very deep. It goes so very deep. And, um, you know, there's probably a lot of people that are involved in this that don't realize that they're involved in it.
right.
Again, you get into some things like MK Ultra and creating altars, and so you sometimes they just don't know.
Mm,
Um, and it's really horrible when people hear about what is happening to children, what's been happening to them, and it's so grotesque. It's so um, unfathomable is the word, that
yes.
you just it's hard to believe that there would be human beings that would be doing this. Um, so
I
it's
mean, I
hard to
feel
wrap your head around.
that like they've been showing it to us little by little in movies and things like that. So people tend to dismiss it like, oh, that was a movie, you know,
Yeah,
and that's why they do it, because they want the regular people who aren't going to question anything to just think it's a movie and you just got it from a movie and it's not real, and just
yeah,
miss it. And then the other people who might be open enough to believe that it's real, it's just so hard to hear,
it is.
you
It
know.
is. There's a lot of movies and television shows that are nothing more than like soft disclosure.
Yes.
And they do poke fun and make fun of, of all of these things that are considered conspiracy theories. There was a show on Netflix a couple of years ago about, I think it was a cartoon, and it was a girl, and she worked at, this secret lab, and the president was a robot, and the government officials were making a deal with these reptilian cartoon characters. And again, I think a lot of disclosure, a lot of this stuff is presented in a way to ha ha make fun
Make
of
it,
it, so that
yes,
people
make it
that are trying,
ridiculous.
yeah, so that,
Yeah.
people who are coming out with true stories and things that have happened to them or family members or people that they know, um, it's another way to kind of keep that ridicule going. But
Yeah.
um, one thing that I learned is that they have to tell you who they are. They have to tell you who they are. They may not come right out and say it, but not in a sense, but they'll give you hints, and that's where discerning is really, really key.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that if it looks like a duck, if it walks like a duck, it's probably a duck.
Yeah. Exactly. Right. And using your intuition, common sense,
Yeah.
not believing everything that you hear in the media,
Hmm.
um, and on TV shows, because if you think about who's the source of all of that information? Where is that coming from? Is it,
Yeah.
is it really a good source? So, I mean, I know that there's political lines drawn and there's all kinds of things that they use to divide us, to keep us from really seeing the truth, and believing it. But I feel like it's becoming more and more obvious because so many weird things are happening, and things that you can't really explain.
Yeah.
And so there's platforms out there, as we've discussed, that are helping people see things like, you might see more things on X now. You definitely.
There's a ton of truth and, experiencers that are coming out on X. There's people that are exposing things, and it's a really it's refreshing. I'll just say it's refreshing compared to if you did try to come out and say something on Facebook or Instagram or another platform.
Right.
Uh, you know, that's the thing, the mainstream media for sure is, creating and spinning stories that they want to keep you in that frequency of, division and hate and, you know, just really those lower frequencies of division and hate are the only two words that keeps coming into my mind. But
Constantly arguing with each other, trying to, in a kind of ego mind.
yeah. And really it's to me that's just showing, they're kind of in a way, again, not all, but I feel like, that division is part of the game. It doesn't really matter what side you're claiming to be on.
Right.
It's two sides of the same coin,
Yes.
owned by the same media, the same people.
Yes.
So if you're focusing on a party, that's really, again, in my, I think there are good people that try to go in to politics, but I think
Mhm.
that there's a game. And once you get to DC or once you get to a certain level, there's a game. And if you're not willing to play the game, then you're not going to be able to get much done and you're not going to be successful.
Right.
So, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's true for everyone. I mean, every person that comes into this world, it's like you're really playing a game in some kind of a, holographic universe.
I know it
So,
sounds very basic and old school, but you're right. Like one of the things that I've learned on this spiritual path and this journey and, working through all of the crazy things that I apparently signed up for as a soul in this lifetime is that, you know, my guide said one time, he said, it's very much like Super Mario Brothers,
yes.
you're you've got to complete level one before you can get to the next level. And, so we're all leveling up in some way. Each time that we see something or that we trust our gut or that we discern or we choose where to put our energy and our time and our focus. So we're learning lessons and none of us get to skip a lesson. And I think that's really hard sometimes when we see others struggling with,
Yeah.
a lesson that we've learned. And
Yeah.
that goes back to practicing, respect and free will of their journey, sending them unconditional love. And that's how we can be supportive.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. That's beautifully said. Beautifully said. So, what do you do now to um kind of help other people, that be what being what you just said, how do you help other people right now with your what you do?
so probably the two biggest things is spiritual coaching sessions, or intuitive energy healing sessions, and then also some channeling. The channelings I do share, free for the collective. I share those on my website. And then I also share them on my locals app podcast there. Um, I also do individual channeling sessions with White Hawk and the Star Nations. But for me, I think the one offering that really seems to help people the most is the intuitive healing sessions. They are, they're wild. I mean, uh, each one is so very different, because everybody's carrying different stuff, I mean, it's different stories, but I think what I like most about those is, we are clearing the energetic body. We're working on the auric field. I see the body as one layer, like a physical body as one layer, and then I see the energetic body as another layer.
Yes.
So we set the intention for the session, and based on that, that gives me a place to start of saying, okay, this is what this person, this soul wants to work on right now. And we'll go through the main chakras. And then I'll start getting intuitive information. We'll do clearings of cords. We do things like working on the physical body, like literally getting down to blood vessels and platelets and, doing all kinds of clearing in the physical body. But um, we get a lot of intuitive information, and sometimes it's very shamanic.
Mm.
So they may show me objects from past lives that need to be removed. They will usually tell me a story of why this is here and why this is part of their experience and what they're needing to learn from it. The other times it'll be specific plants or flowers, and there's a meaning to it. And a lot of times it has to do with a time frame of when something comes to completion, closure, or a new chapter starting. And then we get into some serious womb work in the sessions, which to me, those are the most rewarding, because I'll actually be able to connect with one of their most healed relatives. So it's
Mm.
kind of like the representative for the maternal line, and then also one for the paternal line.
Wow.
And
I love that.
we, it's really, really neat. I mean, it's so very interesting to see and listen to what they have to say. There'll always be an emotion, and they show it as a bundle. They show it as this bundle that's wrapped up, and the relative that wants the healing will come forward and kind of give us a little bit of information about what this is pertaining to. Um, I should say one thing that I never get, and I've always set the rule with my guides, is never show me a play-by-play of what has happened to someone, especially if it's horrifically abusive.
Mm.
I don't feel that that's very helpful. It can be very triggering for some people, especially when you're working with clients with sexual abuse, or physical abuse, things like that.
Yeah.
But the ancestors will come in, they'll receive the healing. Um, Kuan
Mm.
Yin, Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, and Isis usually come in to assist. Also, the archangels usually come in, and there'll usually be a message about, what they want this person to know. Usually, it's very supportive and loving in whatever they're dealing with or whatever they're trying to work through. So again, it's so very personal that some of it doesn't always mean much to me. Like they may show me something and say, here is this ring, and they want you to see this. They want you to know about this. And of course, I have no idea what this means, but the person receiving the healing knows exactly what ring and what relative it came from. And so it's just really, really beautiful how it's so very personal.
That is
And
beautiful.
yeah, so we'll work on all the relatives and go back and forward into their lineage to clear as much as possible as we can in one session. Um, it's been interesting too working with clients strictly for, the medical intuitive purpose. If they have a specific chronic illness, and also some clients that are vax injured that receive a healing and clearing. And again, it's just so very beautiful the way that their ancestors and their guides are there to support and give them tools so that they can help themselves going forward. So, and there's usually channeled messages in there too. It just really depends on what the main focus of the session needs to be. What is it that they need the most right now? So
Yeah.
it's really fun. I really love that part.
Yeah,
So.
that sounds amazing. How do you connect with them? Um, do you ask to connect with them? Like how does that work?
So everything is done remotely, and I connect in by clearing my space. I clear the client's space. I create an energetic connection, and clear the technology that we're using, and then bring in White Hawk of the Star Nations, the archangels, and any of the ascended masters or guides that need to be there for that particular session. Sometimes there are guides that will show up, and maybe they're usually just a space holder. And then we'll get to a specific part of the healing session, and White Hawk will let me know this particular ascended master or this archangel or this guide needs to work on this, and there's a reason why.
Mm.
So that's how usually it works. We start with the chakra body, and the auric field, just working with those first.
Right.
And things really kind of just, again, it's divinely led. Like one in particular I can think of is somebody who had a cancer, a very aggressive cancer in one of the lower chakras. And, we were asking, why is this here? And the answer was they're holding on to some anger. They're holding on to, you know, anger about a situation. And I said, well, tell me more. And so it led me up to the heart chakra and eventually up to the throat chakra. And it was a situation in which the person had a really bad experience with a family member, and they could not speak about it and they could not clear it. They didn't know what to do. So they literally just kind of shut up about it, and they were holding on to all the anger about the things that they couldn't say to this person for fear that they would lose connection to their their family members, and especially the children within that family. So it was very traumatic for them to be holding on to that.
Wow. That's amazing. I'm sure there's so many people out there that can relate to that. So that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And what I like about it is they always give intuitive information about how to support the person. Their higher self can come through and say, you know, this is what they really need to know, or this is something you need to practice, or this is a way that they can support themselves um, moving forward, and this is where their focus should be. So that's always really, really helpful. It's not just a clearing and you're done. It's
Yeah.
we're getting all the meat of why it's there, and then we're getting the tools to help them move forward so they can support themselves.
That's beautiful. And so they feel when they're done, they feel like I bet it feels almost kind of like you just walked out of a sauna or a jacuzzi or something, right?
For a lot of them, because I do this all remotely, um, there have been some clients that, they choose to lie down in a comfy place while I send and do the healing. And so a lot of times they'll fall asleep just because their energetic body is so exhausted.
Right.
Uh, I find this to be true for clients who've never had any kind of energetic clearing or energetic healing before, and there's no judgment there.
Mm.
We're constantly bombarded as human beings by low frequencies, by, the foods, the water that we drink, or the air that we breathe, um, the media and the frequencies around us, and the people that are around us that we have to come into contact with that are maybe not working on anything and kind of stuck in that low vibrational stuff.
Right.
So, if they've been subjected to a lot of that, then it's really easy for them to just fall asleep. Some clients experience like visions, or they'll feel colors or see colors or hear music. And it's always interesting to hear their experiences on the other end of what they're experiencing while it's being done. So
Right.
it's really beautiful.
Wow, that is beautiful. I'm glad that you're doing this. I'm just I don't feel like there's a lot of people that are out there doing this. I think we had this conversation that it's been
Yeah.
hard to explain to people what remote healing is. They understand
Yeah.
what it is in person, but they don't really understand how it works. How can I know that it's working when you're not right in front of me and I can't see you like you can they can see you, but it's not the same to them,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. I mean, we've basically, grown up seeing, and our society is very much about the physical world, the things that you can touch, that you can, see in your physical reality. So, the idea of a remote healing session where the person is not even touching you, they're, probably in a different time zone or even in a different country,
yeah.
it's a little bizarre to wrap your head around. And to be very honest, when I started, practicing this method on people, there was a lot of resistance, and, you know, people kept asking me like, well, what is this? And I said, well, it's energy healing. I knew it was a little more than Reiki because, there was just so much deeper levels of understanding and information, and um, just amazing things were coming through. So I really didn't want to call it Reiki. And I remember somebody who did have Reiki previously, and I told them, can I, do you want a practice session? And they said, sure. And as soon as they got done, they said, that is not Reiki. And I said, okay. And again, being so new and, that fast and just very, you know, almost head spinning awakening and opening up to all of this stuff really, it was kind of a disadvantage for me, compared to some people who'd known about shamanic practice or knew about energy healing or knew about all of this. And so the best way for me to really be able to dig in and understand it, because in the beginning I was very, very resistant to it. There was still a lot of resistance of,
Yeah,
I don't understand this because I can't see it and I can't figure out how it works. So
right.
I started looking into quantum physics.
Yes.
And so when I started understanding the very basics, 101 crash course of, quantum physics for dummies, that was my best way to say, okay, everything is energy. We are energetic beings. And it was really a good way for me to explain to clients that, are coming from Western medicine and Western psychology, even that are dealing with trauma, that, your physical body, if you want to call it your meat suit, that is nothing more than an alarm system to let you know. So if there's pain or disease or discomfort within the body, it's an alarm system to let you know that your energetic body, something's wrong, something needs to be cleared, something is coming up for you to recognize and address and then integrate the knowledge and the healing from. So once I understood that, you know, most of what we don't know is about our energetic bodies and how our reality really works. Our physical reality is not the only thing that there is. And so it's getting people out of their logic mind to understand that, not everything can be experienced in the physical reality, and hoping to educate them on the basics of quantum physics and understand that they are a quantum being, that they have access to other dimensions. They
Yes.
have way more gifts and way more possibilities than what they can imagine. And I think that's the one thing that, the Star Nations wants people to understand is, you know, there's a micro and there's a macro. And we've been living in the micro for so long that we need to look up, we need to zoom out and take the eagle eye view and see that there's so much more available to us.
Yeah.
And
Very
we're
well said.
far more capable of things than beyond our understanding, even at this point. So,
Yes, yes, that's beautiful, and that's part of like the quantum is the fractal. We're talking about fractals, like micro, macro, scalability. It's anybody who hasn't studied quantum physics, I highly recommend it. And there's a lot of papers that you can read, a lot of books that you can read out there, um, and it's just it really opens your mind to what the possibilities are, what the potentials are
yeah,
of what you're capable as a human being of doing. Because we think of ourselves as limited in a way. We sort of are in the meat suit. We're limited, but outside of the meat suit, which is where we can start identifying less with the body. Not that you want to completely throw the body out with the bathwater,
right, right,
you don't, but
right.
we can identify more with our spirit and our soul. Then it makes it much easier to see what we're capable of and what we can actually do. The gifts that we may have, or that we do have actually, and that we just haven't connected with possibly yet, or we're maybe just starting to.
We are starting to connect with our potential, which I
Yes.
think that's a fitting thing to say considering this is the name of the podcast. But
Yes.
there is so much potential. And I think that's the one thing that the Star Nations are always trying to get people to understand is that you are far more capable. Your species is far more capable than you realize. And
Yeah.
a lot of this knowledge has been very hidden from you. And you've operated in a world that someone else has created to and was designed to keep you in a state of lower frequency. And even Dolores Cannon, who came up with QHHT, which is, uh, wonderful, wonderful modality. But she has, been told by multiple higher selves and multiple sessions, and there's other QHHT practitioners that would definitely agree with this, is that, you know, we as human beings have the capability to heal our physical body. And that is just scratching the surface of
Absolutely.
what we are able to do. Um, we are able to raise our frequency and to, activate more strands of our DNA, which gives us more access to consciousness that we weren't able to before.
Yes.
And, changing our structure from a carbon base to a crystalline base structure, being able to access your Merkaba light body.
Yes.
The list goes on and on. Again, there are so many layers and levels of knowledge, and I'm very excited to see where humanity goes. I have so much hope for us because of what's finally being able to be shared in places that are creating a space for this to be shown, for this to be shared, communicated, and there's just so much potential for each and every soul. So
Absolutely. Yes.
don't
And
pay attention to the mainstream media and all of the bullshit they put out there.
yes. Definitely. That just a beautiful message. And I just want to thank you again for coming on here and just being so amazing.
Thank you
Everything.
for having this show. I really, really appreciate you doing this. I know that it's going to continue to grow, and you've had some wonderful guests on there and wonderful info. So keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much. Really means a lot. And I really do want to have you back on again. We'll
Absolutely.
be able to talk about anything you want because you're just you're just so you've got so much inside of you that I feel needs to come out. It's just it's in there. I
I
want
know
it.
that there's so much more with the SSP stuff to share.
Mm,
Um, and again, I think that is, it is definitely like it's a wild experience. You know,
mm.
I think about the movie Jupiter Ascending
Yes.
and how that really was kind of a, oh my gosh, like it just really opened my own eyes. And, I remember my former life before all of this came about. And, you know, so it really resonated to see that movie. And, I think each one of us has many, many stories to share. And, the SSP stuff is something that I'm definitely open to sharing because I think there's a lot there for people to learn about. It will hopefully help them understand who they are and what their potential is. So,
Absolutely. Yes, yes. And I'm just I'm just so grateful to have you here and that you're willing to do that and you're willing to share your story and um just really be vulnerable to do that because it's not an easy thing to do. It's not easy to become vulnerable.
I think that the one part that makes it very difficult about being vulnerable about it is, you know, knowing that, there's a part of you, there's a piece of your consciousness, there's a piece of you that was taken and that was used in such nefarious ways against your will, without your consent.
Yes.
And, there's a lot of anger
Mm,
that you have to go through to process to come to terms with it. There's also, levels of fear about, sharing it. And then there's also levels of grief of, what have I been used for? What did I do? Did I hurt people? And that's a whole level of violation that most people really have a hard time thinking about. So it is truly a process. But I mean, ultimately, the more we share these things, the easier it is for people to come to terms with what they don't want when it's right in your face. You can't ignore it anymore. And so things have to change. So
absolutely. Yeah, you can't ignore it. It's become blatantly obvious and everybody is seeing it now. So that's it's the veil is lifting, thankfully. And
yeah.
and we're starting to see the truth. And so we have to do something. We can't just stand by and watch this continue. So we have to do something. And thank you for being brave enough to come forward and talk about it and do something, because that's what
Yeah.
you're doing. You're doing
Yeah.
something. So thank
Yeah.
you.
We're all in this together.
Yes. Yes.
Well,
So,
thank
well,
you so much.
absolutely. And I'll, like I said, we'll definitely have Miranda on again very soon. I look forward to doing more of these. Um, it's just it's just been a pleasure. And I just I really I really appreciate everybody for tuning in. And anybody wants to share anything in the comments, please feel free. I'm going to have in the description of the video all of Miranda, where you can contact her, where you can find her, and how you can reach out to her for her energetic healing. It's something that I'm doing too, but it's just on a much more low key level right now. but but I'll be out there too, and I just want this to keep happening for people. And just want to encourage everyone to just realize that you are loved, no matter what you think or believe or whatever is out there telling you otherwise. Please realize that you are loved, and I love you very much. And thank you for listening. Ciao for now.